I'm Kirby Allison, and I love helping the well-dressed acquire and care for their wardrobes. Join me as we explore the world of quality, craftsmanship, and tradition. Hi, I'm Kirby Allison. In today's video, we traveled to Georgetown, Texas, just a small town located about 30 minutes north of Austin. And here we're going to be visiting with one of Texas's great hatters, Nathaniel Funmaker of Nathaniel's Custom Hats. What I love about Western wear is the richness of quality, craftsmanship, and tradition. Today, we're going to see what we can find at Nathaniel's Custom Hatters. Nathaniel, hey, great to see you.
How are you?
And thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
And it's a privilege to be down here.
Thank you.
I've, of course, been following you on Instagram for a long time and have
Yeah.
seen all your amazing work with kind of Western hat making. And, we're down in Austin visiting Lee Miller later today, and thought we'd run up to Georgetown and see what you've got here.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about kind of like your background, Nathaniel, and how you got into hat making. I mean, they're beautiful hats, but, here you are in Georgetown. I know that earlier you told me you're Native American.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you get into hat making, and how did you get here to Georgetown?
It's funny you say that, and I often share that with customers. I always like that little connection of sharing my little world and someone sharing their little world. But I'm Ho-Chunk Indian. It's a tribe in Wisconsin. It's about 12,000 tribal members.
Okay.
I lived there till I was 5, and then my folks moved away. So I grew up out west, from Albuquerque to Santa Fe to Colorado to California, but wound up, of all things, landing in Mancos, Colorado. There was a hat maker there, and that's where I started making hats, never thinking or wanting really to own a shop. But in 5 years, I bought the business and kept making hats.
But how did you get in? I mean, so there you are in this small town in Colorado.
Yeah.
You've kind of got the background. I mean, was there something about craft that drew you to hat making, or was it just kind of they had an opening and you just...
Again, it was not a hat per se, but it was art.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at this as art.
Absolutely.
Whereas a lot of hatters I know are really good craftsmen, really good with equipment. I'm on that other end of art of I want to look. I always tell people I want the hat to flow. How do I make it flow? So if you look at a lot of my shapes, at the end of the day, I really make them flow, and that's my theory.
Yeah, the sculpture of it.
The sculpture of it, you're right.
Yeah.
And so often my wife says, hey, that hat has to get shipped out, because I'll shape it and shape it and shape it and shape. So I'm never satisfied.
Yeah, that's kind of the mark of a true artist is, they're never fully satisfied with their work. I mean, one of the things that's really interesting to me about Western wear is the richness of the tradition here in America, and it's uniquely American Western wear. And of all of kind of, the crafts here in America, I mean, Western wear still is really as vibrant and as rich today as it was, 50, 60, 70, 100 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, do you find that through your work?
I do find that, and I love that. I think I'm fortunate. I've connected already with people like-minded, or I'm into a good saddle. I'm into a good pair of boots. So I think that already I have qualified customers of no, I know what this is. I know it's not cheap.
Yeah.
I know I have to wait. Yeah. I know your hands are going to make it. Mm-hmm. So those are good things for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about the oral tradition of really hat making? I mean, it's really passed down from craftsperson to craftsperson.
You're right.
So whenever you were learning, I mean, just like Charlie Dunn, taught Lee Miller, you had this hatter, who was the town's hatter, teach you.
Yeah. No, I know the first one, Perry Lewis, was the originator. A cowboy still, probably in his 80s, a good guy. Steve King, who I learned from, was a second hatter, and I knew Steve, so there was a little personal connection there. Me and him planted trees and cut timber for years together.
Okay, wow.
So when Steve took over for Perry, Steve called me and said, hey, I need help. So at that time, I didn't know a thing about a hat. So I was like, this will be fun. I thought of it as the thing he said was we're going to make hats. And the thing make just like excited me. Like I'm in, I'm all
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
And so coming in, and when I teach somebody, I want that same person, usually that knows nothing. It's like if you're a craftsman, I could teach you and mold you how I want to mold you.
Yeah.
I think those are the best.
Yeah. And does making still excite you today like it did back when you first started?
It totally does. I told you earlier though, I sold a hat yesterday and to a woman, and what I love is this connection of, well, here's where I'm going to wear it. Here's what I do. You know, all these little factors that to me add up to a great hat. So I'm that person that people always say how good I am, but I'm better at listening and taking in intel, and then I execute that. It's like, from what you're telling me, here's what I'm going to say we should do.
Yeah. It's like a skilled doctor. It's like, it's like listening to the client and understanding how they're going to wear the hat, where they're going to wear the hat, who they are, and then kind of taking that combined with all your experience and then making a recommendation.
I think that's a totally true statement. After 26 years, I've learned the wrong way after 1,000 times. Like, don't dictate it. Let me hear from you. It's like, here's where I live. Here's where I think I want to wear it. Or I have people that have never had a hat that say, I want a hat, but I just look stupid in a hat. And I said, well, it's the wrong hat. And often they'll say, well, what is the right hat? And again, I will say, I don't know. We're going to talk. And at the end of our conversation, maybe we've come up with something for you. Maybe not. But to me, what sells my hats, the billboard is somebody wearing my hat and happy with it. And usually a story of like, well, me and Nate got together, we talked about this, and here's what we came up with.
Yeah. That's interesting. So where do you start that conversation? I mean, you get this beautiful wall of hats. And I think one of the things that can be overwhelming about hats is there are so many choices and options, right? So how do you begin to narrow this down into something that results in the perfect hat for a customer?
I think often, again, my little brochure has like 10 styles, and I like that. So, but what happens when I say that is you can't be lazy. You can't just show 30 hat pictures and someone to pick. I go beyond that and go, okay, so you like my classic Gus. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you about that classic Gus. So often it's a face shape or a chin shape or that I'm going to help determine
or
the
complexion.
final shaping. Or yeah, we talked about that earlier. I mean, this is our palette to work with. So to me, again, you can talk to 10 hatters, Kirby, and they will all have different theories of what good is. And I love that. I think it should be that.
Yeah. Well, what do you think makes, I mean, do you feel like a hat really is personalized? I mean, does a hat grow more personal the longer you've had it?
I say it totally does. I say it's my buddy. You know, often I'll sell a hat to somebody. I sell them for $600 to $1,000. So usually when someone orders and gets their hat from me, they say, well, this was my once in a lifetime thing, and thank you so much. And I thank them, and they leave. And then a year later, they walk in the door again. I go, okay, now you got me. So what else would I look good in? What else? And often what that entails is somebody that buys a cowboy hat, cattleman, whatever, usually a cattleman style hat. And then they come in and go, well, I've been watching your videos and you've made a lot of fishing, hiking hats. Well, I fish a lot, I hike a lot, I hunt a lot. So what's that hat? So to me, that's that cool part of like, it doesn't have to just be a Western hat. It could be more of a urban-y fishing, hiking, onto, I ship hats probably 3 days a week. So I send a lot of hats to New York, a lot of hats to Chicago, a lot of hats to San Francisco. I think big towns, there's something in their DNA of like, even though they may have never gotten a hat, it's like they walk in here and go, wow.
Yeah.
There's selection.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about kind of the elements of quality. I mean, what differentiates that $600 hat from the $1,000 hat?
Yeah.
And then what is it that gives hats their durability and longevity? Because that's another characteristic of a well-made hat is you can keep it for the rest of your life.
I think when you say that there's no shortcuts to quality, and I wish there was as far as me building it. There's not. I have to put in a long time to iron it, to cure it. I cure a hat like 4 different ways. So again, a lot of people say, well, my hatter does this. It's like, that's fine. I mean, I'm just going to say what I do. I don't
Yeah.
take a shortcut. People pay good money, 600, 1,000. I'm very into like, it's still the best hat I could make.
Yeah.
When it's not, I need to move on and go do something different.
Are you still making the hats the exact same way today as you were, 25 years ago?
You know what I added was a blocking machine, which I showed you earlier. It's a 100-year-old blocker that has 60 fingers that helps me block a hat, start the process. And that actually makes a better hat than me hand doing it. So
Okay.
I hand did it for 12 years. And if I still had to hand do it because it's so much force on my elbows and shoulders, I would have not been doing it by now.
Yeah. It's an interesting way, especially in hat making, where the tools that you're using are still controlled manually,
Yeah.
right? But they help you actually do a more consistent product and really do a better product without really compromising any of the quality.
That's a good statement and a true statement. And if used right, because you could do all that and not take the time that it takes. Like my plater, I'll leave it in a plater for about 3 hours. Most guys are like 10 minutes.
Okay.
So I don't want to say that as in I'm the best, I'm this. This is just the way I do it.
Yeah.
It's the way I want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your craft?
It's my craft, correct.
Yeah.
And I mean, I want to see someone a year later and going, oh my God. So I told you this story. It's like, I just felt like this was an overpriced hat. Now that I've worn it for a year, oh my gosh, this is of the highest quality.
Yeah.
When I sit, this is a gentleman telling me this. When I sit down and eat dinner, I sit down on my couch, watch TV, and my hat's still on my head when I don't even know it's on my head. So,
Yeah. What is it? I mean, can you describe what makes that hat, so great? I mean, is that something that can be described, or does it just have to be experienced?
no, I think it's something that when I say that, I do sand them with a few grits of sandpaper. I do hand finish them. I think a lot of that hand work is a big separator with other hatters of like, I'm still gonna take the time to do that. And I'm gonna say too, I wish it wasn't that, but I think we know that in any manufacturer, it's like either you could make something of high quality, which will take a lot of time, or you could just slap it out and be done.
Yeah. Well, it's like a bespoke suit. I mean, all the handwork and everything that goes into the product, it's not handwork for the sake of handwork. And there's an actual reason behind that creates an end product that's got more integrity, that's more comfortable.
Correct.
It's longer lasting. You can be rougher with it, and it's still going to look great, which gives it its durability and longevity. Do you find in hat making that it's really much the same?
It's totally the same, especially to me. Some of my women hat wearers, one's an equine trainer.
Okay.
And her hat, I'm going to say 20 years later, it's crusty and dirty, and she's bought new hats from me. But at the end of the day, she says, people always love my old dirty Nathaniel's hat that I will break out and wear. And often because she films too, often my film crew is like, let's try that new hat. And after they start filming, they go, Julie, go back to your old hat.
Yeah.
And
Well, there's something to be said for the patina of an old hat, right? Because a hat does develop patina, and it is meant to be worn.
Yes.
And it should be worn, and
Correct.
it shouldn't be, protected or coddled in such a way that it doesn't begin to show its age.
Yes. We talked about that earlier too. I will distress a hat, but I don't like to. I mean, I want it to be worn where the more you wear it, like mine has a little rip on it. This is 15 years old and it's thinner. It's pure beaver fur, but to me, again, it's like, this is when it starts getting good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a lighter colored beaver, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to show kind of that age and the patina more easily than, say, a black hat would.
Yes.
But I mean, it's kind of part of the beauty in it.
I often laugh and say, me being Native American and darker skin, I'm already that distressy, frumpy. So I need some good lines for me. So usually a cattleman or this, I call it a 512 cattleman. It's kind of an offshoot of an open road Stetson.
Okay.
it just gives you good lines, and
Yeah.
I need that. I mean, look at you. I love that, and I put a suit on, and I just don't feel right in a suit, even though I will wear a suit
Yeah.
once in a while. But I think again, to each their own.
Mm-hmm.
We want it. I want it to be back to a hat. I want it to be yours.
Mm-hmm.
How can it be yours? Because when it is, you're going to wear it.
Yeah.
When it is, you're going to tell 100 people about me.
Yeah.
It's my billboard. It's my walk-in billboard.
Yeah. Can you walk us through some of the different styles of Western's hats? Because I'm not as familiar
Yeah.
as I am with, say, some of the more kind of classic English hats.
Yeah.
You said cattlemen, you said,
Yeah.
hiking, fishing.
Yeah.
What are kind of help me understand that taxonomy of basic kind of fundamental profiles or styles.
Okay. So let me grab a few. Let's start with a cattleman because I keep saying a cattleman. So typically this is very, very common. And this is really what I make the most of.
Okay.
This I call a rodeo. So I have my name for it because I make them, but it's also known as a cattleman hat.
Okay.
So this cattleman could be so many different ways. Again, that's where I'm not a lazy person. I will take the time to talk about, we want a tighter pinch. We want a wider brim. We want this particular one is whiskey color.
Okay.
Yeah. This one is a mixture of beaver and rabbit. This is what I sell the most of because I wear one. I wear a blend.
Okay.
That's 26 years old. So,
Really? Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So this is for, the cowboy, that's on a horse, is
You're
going to
right.
give him his sun protection.
You're right.
That kind of iconic Western hat.
It's a very basic, yet it has great lines. You put on a pressed shirt with this, you're done.
Yeah.
Because that's what most cowboys are. It's like jeans, maybe
Nice
a nice
pressed
shirt
shirt.
to go eat dinner somewhere, and a
Beautiful hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's their accessory.
But there's so many. So we go from that to a another cattleman that. So this is I call this a West Texas. It's also a rodeo style, but this is more of a West Texas, wider brim, more shade. I mean, so there is really a function to.
Yeah. And we're binding the edge here. So
We're binding the edge. I always tell people this in its day was a brush guard. Like we would wear out hats like mine is ripped, but this was a brush guard. This was invented to be more of this will last longer with this ribbon edge on it.
And I guess if the ribbon got torn or ripped, you could replace it.
You totally.
Yeah.
And yet,
It's kind of like toe
now
plates
it's an
for
adornment.
shoes.
Now it's more of a, hey, look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see how does this work with my?
Oh, my
Am I ready for the
goodness
rodeo?
gracious. And yet it's like you have to stand pretty tall to wear that. That's usually for a wider shouldered guy.
Okay.
I mean, mine aren't even wide enough. I think you even got to be a little wider to wear that.
That's a beautiful hat. I mean, you're the big boss in town, and whenever you're walking down the street.
Then we go to what I call a lizard head. So a lizard head is more of a fusion Western hat. This is not a stodgy Western hat. This is a little more contemporary.
Okay. And what makes it a lizard head? Is it the way that it's pinched?
I carried on the style from who I learned from. Lizard head after lizard head pass. So there's rock formations that look like this. So that's
Okay.
really how the hat came about. And I think it came about from we met a Navajo Indian that styled his hats like that and was like, oh, hey, that's kind of a cool style.
Yeah.
So when you're a maker, it's like we are always looking at styles and go, oh, I want to do that too. It has a dip. So the dip means the drop from the front to back with a curl on it. So Kirby, put that one on. Let's see you in this one. Yeah. Again, to me, it's like we're going to keep going through, and I could talk all I want, but until somebody just puts one on, we don't know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Are we getting closer?
This is silver belly.
Okay.
We're getting closer. Silver belly is the color of it, but the quality again is telling you what it is. So the furrier I use is in Tennessee. He makes rabbit fur, 50% beaver, 50% rabbit, or all beaver. So rather than telling people it's the 20X or 30X, the bummer is with this X rating, it's so diluted that I just sell it as what the fur
What it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and beaver, of course, is more waterproof. And that's what's going to give the
more
longevity.
waterproof. It's a natural fiber, so it has a lot of breathability. So those are the good things. And then we move on to what I call classic Gus, where this is an old Western period style hat. This is known as a
Gunslinger?
Montana crease to it's definitely a statement hat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, not for everybody. We got to find the right person. So again, through me talking to somebody, you start to discover and start to listen, start to hear, like, here's what they're telling me. So this definitely makes a statement.
Another beautiful hat.
It makes a statement.
What about, I mean, so these are, all kind of classic traditional Western, right?
Yeah.
What about the hat you're wearing? Where does that kind of fall into?
So this really was a LBJ, open road, Stetson original that I fashioned after a 80-year-old hat I found
Okay.
at a secondhand store. And so it has a little, what we call mule kicks, and everybody calls them mule kicks, and then it has a brick top to it. And this is a brick top.
Yeah.
So
pinched in the front or kind of kicked in, which gives it a real nice kind of shape there. I like that.
and what I like is it's not a big proportion hat. So I think that it could be worn with a lot of stuff versus a cattleman and this is a Western hat as well.
Yeah. An incredible patina. I mean, look at this, the way that this is aged.
To me, it makes it way better. To me, it makes it yours. Yeah. So we go from that to I'm going to show you what I call a Rio Grande. And this hat is also known as a gambler, mostly a woman's hat. The gentleman that I learned from got to make a few movie hats. So this hat was made for Will Smith in the movie Wild Wild West.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So I can't claim it. I did build them, but I can't claim that it was a movie hat I did. But it was something when I was apprenticing that we got to make the hats for.
Really,
that
you
movie.
guys made the hat for them. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's another beautiful hat.
Another beautiful hat, usually a woman's hat. And again, it could be done in a number of colors because it's handmade. So it could be done in a number of proportions. So that's a Rio Grande. I go from that to a hat I make off the net. Now we're going to start to fuse more of this is called a guide. And this is, I want you to put this on, Kirby. So this is more of starting to fuse into more of an urban-y style. Again, it could be modified to anything. And again, that's how I work it, well, let's start talking about it.
Yeah, this one fits quite nicely.
That's I think a 7 1/4. So you're close to a 7 1/4. Yeah. So if I go from there to a hat I call an Explorer, and I do not have an Explorer, but I built this one yesterday. So this, I'm not done with this yet, but it will be a fedora eventually. It'll have a little curl on the brim. And let's get you to put that on, Kirby. This is more of, again, even more urban-y. I'm kind of going down the line of my theory of so this will be more of a fedora, but it also is an Explorer.
Okay.
So I have a gentleman, his name is Josh Bernstein. He hosted a show called Digging for the Truth for about 6 years, and he wore the Explorer style.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Kind of the namesake of how I named it.
Okay.
Yeah, but really, that is my take on a fishing hiking hat.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. So this is close to a fedora, really.
Yeah. That 60-year-old ribbon
Little bit
really
different.
gives it a good look of
Nice
more
tall
of a
ribbon.
fedora. Yeah.
It's a beautiful kind of bow.
So the story is, I've been sharing this on Instagram. These are probably 60 to 80-year-old hat blanks that I've had in storage, who I learned from had them in storage, who he had learned from probably had these in storage.
Really? Amazing.
So these created this hat.
And is this beaver, rabbit?
This is probably a wool rabbit mix, is what I'm guessing. But I'm a pretty good guesser.
Yeah.
That also produced this one. This is a 512 Cattleman that I'm wearing.
Yeah,
but that was made from these as well. I just built that, and I built this. Yeah, let's see how that's on you. Yeah, and again, Kirby, it's like you put it on, and I myself know yes or no, but it takes the individual to do that too. So I reserve my opinion till we start talking about it again.
Interesting.
So,
Well,
yeah.
I'd love to know kind of what's your opinion of what you've seen so far for me. not to peg you, I don't want to rush the process, but I would just be interested in terms of kind of your sense or your feel.
If right now you said, so make me a hat, I'll be back in a few months to pick it up, it would be probably either a granite or a steel, like a gunmetal Explorer to a Fedora.
Okay.
For you.
Yeah.
And often, by the time I'm done talking to somebody, they're like, well, you've already helped me so much, so you make it, you make the hat, you put the hat band you want on it, and it's usually pretty right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I think that's fun about working with artisans is that, at a certain extent, or to a large extent, they're artists, right? And if you try to micromanage their creativity too much, I think you miss out on so much of the magic of that process and the collaboration. It should be a collaboration, but I feel like at the end of the day, the best results are whenever you really defer to the artisan or to the craftsman and let them really create something that's their manifestation or of what they feel like is going to really be unique for you.
I love that take. And often you'll see like a car maker, designer, when somebody, potential customer or a customer says, well, I've loved what you've done so far, so just keep doing it. I'm the happiest when somebody says that, because I could then go, okay, well, let's get a little crazier. Let's get crazier. What does that mean? I'm very traditional. I think, Kirby, I don't know if you haven't visited a lot of hatters, but I'm more traditional. We talk about a distressing or a burning of a hat. I just don't like that. And I think a lot of times, at least when you're a hatter, a bootmaker, I'm going to be true to myself. I'm not going to just go, okay, just because you want that, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Anything else here?
Maybe one of my other hats, I just did this. So this is a velour hat body. It's a lavender color. So this is, when they say velour, it's going to have this rough finish, and it's not meant to be sanded. So this is more of a dress weight hat. So when we say dress weight, the interpretation of that is half the weight of a Western.
Okay.
So these are about 9 ounces. This is about 4 ounces. So typically, usually for a woman, not going to be worn to ride in. Usually more of a fashion thing.
Hat.
Yeah.
Kind of an about town city hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
It's beautiful.
So it to me, because I'm floating a lot of orders, I don't get to do, like I just did this last week, and that feeds me as an artist, but usually I'm going from order to order.
Order to order.
Yeah.
You're not making stock hats, really.
I'm not. I wish I could. I wish I had the time to.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, so, is all the work done here in the workshop?
All the work, so I buy a hat blank. This is a hat blank. But from there, I build it.
Okay.
I block it, I iron it, I sand it, I put a sweatband in it, I shape it. But the beginning of all that is the fitter. So the fitter I use a tape measure, but I also use an 1895 fitter. It's called a Conformateur. It was made in Paris, France. It was made to fit top hats.
Okay.
So people always ask me, are these just for show? Nope, I use these every day.
Really?
I've used this one for 20 years. I've used that one for about 2 years now. So these are a French fitter that sit on your head and punch a little card into a miniature reading of your head shape. And I have thousands of them. I have them from 20 years ago where somebody says, you use that crazy fitter on me. Do you still have that measurement? Yeah, I still have thousands of them.
So that allows you to really personalize the fit of the hat even more.
Totally.
Oh, wow.
Again, a lot of hatters, a lot of older hatters, the original hatter said, I would never have that. And so my theory is like, well, why not if that makes a better hat, if that makes a better fit? So you do have to me, I'm always after that. How can it be better?
Yeah.
This makes it better.
Yeah. And how is that, at what point in the making process does that fit come into play? Because the blocks, the wooden blocks,
Good point.
You're not changing the blocks up.
No, you're not. You're correct.
It's not like you're not carving a custom block
No,
for someone.
we are not.
Could you? Is that like in shoemaking? Could you take someone's Conformateur and carve a custom block that's like exactly their head?
I don't. But what I do is there is about I think 4 blocks that I use. And when I say 4 blocks, I mean, I have sets of 4 blocks and they're different tapers. So for a blockier head like me, I have a rounder face and a blockier face. Being Native American, it's kind of round, my head shape. So I use something for my personal hats that is more blocky. And then when I make more of a long oval hat that's more oblong, I will often use a more tapered block.
Okay.
Sometimes I tell a customer and sometimes I don't. I just do it.
Yeah. So this is helping you really kind of select which block is appropriate for the customer.
It totally is. And yet there's times where people go, I have a long oval head, but I want it this. So you have to listen to the customer and make sure that it's what both of you feel is right for the individual. But back to the conformer. If you're more oblong, what you're going to see is often people will put a hat on and it looks like a mushroom on them. But once it's built to their head shape, it frames their face shape so much better.
So this goes back to the fact that a lot of people feel like they don't look good in hats, but it could be just because they're not wearing the
It
right
totally
hat.
could be that. And often that is the case.
More often than not. Yeah, interesting. Well, can you show us kind of the workshop and what you have working back there?
Yep. Should we go back and check it out?
That'd be great.
So this is my production mega workforce of me.
So this is where it all happens.
So
and
we
then-
start with, these are blanks. So this is my next run of orders that I have going.
This is 100%.
This is
probably
pure
got some-
beaver.
Pure beaver, okay.
Yeah.
So this is a pure beaver, but it's still quite rough.
Yeah, and that's
It
where
doesn't have that smooth finish.
we're
quite
gonna
yet.
sand it with 4 to 5, sometimes 6 grits of sandpaper. Again, until I do it, people always say, oh, you should write a book. It's like, well, it's hard to write a book on instruction when every blank is different.
Different, yeah. And that's why it's such an oral tradition teaching someone. Like, you just have to be shown, and you have to feel it.
Yeah, because often people will go, well, I just did what you did, but 3 grits, like, yeah, but that was this.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
So where do you take this next? So we've got the blank.
So we got
you've
the
selected
blank.
the color. You've
Correct.
selected the material.
Right.
Rabbit,
Right.
blend, or beaver.
So I'm going to go back now to the blocks.
Okay.
I have about 4 sets of blocks, and it's going to be blocked. This is the blocking machine. So the blocking machine is pretty amazing in that the hat gets set in like so. Let's see if it'll work today. This is probably an 80-year-old machine, and some days it has a mind of its own. So the fingers are now pressed in, and I get the steam rolling. Everything's done with steam. So this is the steam. This is running about 40 pounds of pressure. The steam is hosed in and blows up through here. So once that's done, once this is set, then we set in the proper block, and proper meaning the right height,
For you.
the right
For the
size,
customer.
the right taper. So this will set in like so, and I'll start. I always have a ruler. I just start measuring. Like, okay, I need it a ½ inch off of here. I need it all the way down for a cattleman. I need it. So there's different there's different heights. There's different tapers. So this is the starting of the hat.
And so this is creating that kind of first basic shape
Correct.
of the actual.
Correct. People always say, so when does that form of the final finish come in? When does that come in? It's like, well, when my hands come in to do it. So
That's at the end.
I don't have a form. But I've committed to a crown height, a brim width. So yeah. So it gets done with there. That's the blocking machine. Once that comes off, it goes in my plater. My plater was a dry cleaning piece of equipment that me and a guy, I always called him the Mad Hatter, the mad scientist, because he invented that. More or less, he made me a plater. So a plater is a curing device that cures the brim. So once we pull this out, it's pretty tight. And what happens is people always think, well, you pulled it so hard, did that compromise the fur? No, it did not at all. It's actually compressing it even more to help it be thinner and tighter. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's my theory of like, ooh, I want it thin and tight and light.
Yeah. Kind of like pounding out the outsoles.
Totally.
Bespoke shoemaker will spend hours just pounding the leather outsole to compress it down, and it is one of the things that creates the durability again of a bespoke shoe. You
Isn't
end
it?
up resoling it less often.
That's amazing. Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yet that didn't happen by going, I need that to be that. No,
Yeah.
I got to do it. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of again curing the hatch. You're really kind of compressing the brim.
yep. Compressing the felted fur, it's felted fur, the crown height, then it sits on the plater, and then I bring it back over. Let's pull this out. So then I bring it back over to the crown iron. So if we could imagine, this has now been set to a crown height. I'm going to come over and set it on this machine, which is about an 80-year-old machine. It sits in, cinches down like so. And then this is a weighted iron. So that iron, you will see. So you can imagine a hat blank sitting on here. But now we're fully committing to, again, it's ironing it and compressing it, Kirby. So again, it's helping me make a thinner, stiffer, lighter weight hat.
Yeah.
So,
And this is where you start really kind of, it's the finishing. You're giving the finesse to the actual hat body versus that real rough, kind of felted blank.
Correct.
Because the felt has a lot of texture, but like the hat that you have has a beautiful kind of smooth, clean finish, and this is kind of all that process.
This is really starting and setting it, and this is like so many things in making, whether it's boots or saddles, or if it's not done right to start, it just gets worse and worse
Yeah.
and worse. So you really need to take your time, and it's like, this is right. Okay, do that. This is right. Okay, start that. So once the crown is ironed, so now the brim is flat, the crown is open. I set it on my workbench here, my dirty workbench, and I start to. Now here's that process of starting to put a head shape in it. So that's long oval. This is a regular oval.
And so that's not done at the blocking process.
So that's done now by hand. So
Okay.
in starts our part of making it to somebody's head shape.
Okay.
Yeah. So
And here you're taking in the reading from the.
So I will have that order in front of me with the conformer reading. So I'm going to mimic that. So often you will see like this. I had started with felt spacers. I started there wider oval in the back, longer in the forehead. Now, some people will just manipulate it when it's ironed and done. I'm that nut that's going to take my time and set his head shape from the start.
Really,
into
that's
it.
amazing.
Yeah.
So this is totally based off of, kind of the unique measurements of that particular customer.
Correct. His
And
head
this, at
shape.
the end of the day, is what creates that comfort.
Yes.
Where it just slips on
and
fits
holds
perfectly.
and holds that shape. Yeah.
That's cool.
So this part of it, it's a 1/2 inch bigger than your head. So I think you're 22 3/4. You're 7 1/4.
Okay.
So this part will be 23 1/4. It'll be a 1/2 inch bigger because at the end I put in the sweatband. So theoretically, a sweatband's going to take up a 1/2 inch
Really?
for me, for my theory. Yeah. So once that's ironed into it, and then I go in my sanding booth and I sand it. So my sanding booth is pretty basic. This is, again, 3 grits to 5 grits of sandpaper. So this is a pretty basic, I use a Porter cable sander.
Okay.
Yeah,
And you just sit there and sand.
I do. A lot. And this is, I think it's funny when you meet a lot of makers, there is one part of their job that they like the least.
Yes.
This is what I like the least. The gentleman I learned from, his biggest tip to me in all the business and all the hat shop and all, he said, get a good set. He's like, I'm losing my hearing because I never wore a mask. I never wore, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm
So-
sure you've got small particles flying all over the
Oh, yeah.
place. Is this hooked up
Yes.
to a vacuum?
This is I run this little vacuum over here when I start. So this is not in my last shop, I actually had a whole sanding booth.
Okay.
So this is a little compromise to have a showroom.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing. It's hard to balance a showroom and manufacturing. And
How much time do you spend sanding? I mean, is this
this
the
could
longest?
be a 15-minute, it could be a 2-hour.
Really? And
Again,
what's the beta there?
We
What-
can't dictate that. You're not going to dictate it. You're not.
just
You want
whatever,
to.
whatever the hat needs.
You want to say 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Usually it's not.
Not.
And it's like Murphy's Law when, like, I need this to come out great, very quick. It's not gonna.
Yeah. And I see some like measuring tools in here and some brushes.
Yeah. So these are the brushes. They're horsehair brushes. So I'm often going in and brushing them and working them. And then this is a quite a treasure for me. This is an 80-year-old brim cutter. So there is new brim cutters now, but I love this. The older, the better.
Yeah. I love the brass. I mean, look at how that's
know.
aged. Right. I mean, this was built, to last more than a lifetime.
Yeah.
So this is 80 years old.
This is at least I would say 80 years old.
If not older, who knows, right?
And I mean, and often it's getting a little loose here. So this is where the owner operator is good, that somebody else is going to just come in and go, oh, this is, and it's like, no. So
Don't touch.
yes, I really know.
It's like a tailor's shears. Never touch another tailor's shears.
Right. I mean, we have scissors that this is for thread, this is for paper, and so that's the hard thing, to just bring somebody in again
Well,
and
it's
just see
respecting
them
the-
throwing this around like, oh, no, please don't do that.
And
please."
respecting the tools.
Yeah.
Ah, that's great. So this
And,
is
and yeah, whether you're traditional or not, you better take care of your machine, your tools, because if you lose them, you're not going to be able to do it.
yeah.
So
This is great. So then, you've sanded, and then how close to the end of the process are you at?
So
by
I've
then?
sanded, and now I will put in the sweatband. So let's
Okay.
go back to this little table here, and I'll pull out a sweatband. So here's my sweatband. So these are sheepskin. They were once lamb, but these have my name, my logo on them.
Okay.
So these are have a concaveness to them. So these I cut to size and sew in.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So part of the sewing in is the sweatband is lipped over. So when I say lipped over, people always say, how do you not sweat through your hat so quick? It's like, well, I lip my sweatbands over where it doesn't allow sweat to go through so easy.
Okay.
So you're wearing more of this leather rather than this threading. Yeah.
And that's kind of your approach, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's another separator of like,
I like this tag in here, the boss's hat. Not for sale.
I mean, I just take, again, not to rush the process.
Yeah.
It's like, let's do it right. If we're going to do it, we do it right.
Yeah. This is such a beautiful hat. I mean, such great patina.
And yet, this is my newer of my two hats.
Yeah.
Everybody always says, you must have 20 hats. Well, what happens is I build a new hat for me, and I'll sell it off my head often.
Literally.
But-
that's why you've got that note. It's probably more of a reminder for yourself.
It's often somebody
Yeah.
will put it on and go, so what will you take for this? I'm
Yeah.
like, no.
No. What about the so what's your other, can you grab that for me real
Yeah,
quick?
let's grab the other hat that is more of my buddy. So this one is like, if we say this is a perfect fitting hat, it's really not, because it's not as old as this one is. But this is 25 years old.
Amazing.
So after, I think, my first year of hat making, the gentleman that owned it is like, well, you might as well make you a hat. So this was the hat.
25 years.
Yeah, 25 years.
And this, I mean, again, look at the patina on this. I mean, this is,
Yeah, it's pretty
You know.
gross, but it's my grossness, I
Yeah.
guess. But it's my buddy. I mean, you will see. I know when somebody puts on a hat, usually how old it is, but just by them putting it on. But I wear my hats a little lower. I want this feeling. When I sell a hat, I don't dictate that. I will tell somebody, but I say, but you're going to find out through wearing it, through putting it on, it's amazing that hat will decide, and you just got to roll with it. So this is kind of that.
And it kind of settles, right? I mean,
It settles,
You
but
break it in. I mean, do you have to break in a hat the same way maybe you break in a pair of shoes?
You do, but the conformer really is the starter. That conformer is amazing. And yet I've never used it for me. People always say, so you always use that conformer for? No, I've never. I never have, because I know I'm going to wear it hard. I know through sweating in it, it's going to conform to my head very quick.
Very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to wear it.
Yeah, and I want to wear it.
Yeah.
I mean, even I don't have a lot of hair, but even when I had hair, I loved hats. My dad loved hats. My dad was a hat freak. So I blessed or cursed, I was
Yeah. Well,
blessed
there
or
you go.
cursed with that too.
Picking it up.
So from that point, I would go back to the conformer. So we should probably go to the conformer again a little bit.
Okay.
So this was a cutting of Lauren's from the conformateur. This sat in like so, but it was a flat 3x5.
Okay.
So then this sat on her head. The needles opened and punched a circumference reading of her head shape.
And then you cut it out,
I cut it out.
and it's amazing kind of how irregular that is. It's like, it's like you. Let me turn it around.
And
but
it is, but yet it's amazing when it's the miniature and then it blows up. It looks pretty normal once it's blown up.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I can see how just a normal shape
Yeah.
wouldn't really fit this like this would.
Yeah. I mean, this is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And 140 years old. I mean,
It's amazing. Old technology. you
Yeah.
know? Cutting edge at the time.
again, people say, "Is there something new?" I was like, "I don't know. I don't care. I don't care to know."
Yeah, this works.
I mean, this works,
So-
and I love it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
where do you take this then at the end of the process?
So at the end this is loaded into what's called the vermilion. So the vermilion is the other part of the conformateur.
Okay, so this is like the cousin of this, like, two
This
peas
is
in a pod.
This is the executor of like
Okay.
it executes the miniature to the template, an adjustable template of the head
so
size.
you put this in kind of right here. I see a little
right
perforation
register
there.
pins are there.
And then that's what allows you to then customize the
Yes.
block,
Yeah.
And how many pins does this have?
I think this is like a 40 pin.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty high degree of resolution, right?
Yeah, and people always say, so just get another one of these. Well, you don't go to Granger and find one of those. So
Are these wooden?
those are wooden, correct.
Just goes to show you how old it is.
brass adjustable pins. I've had this redone, the screws, and the gentleman that did it said he had to custom find them. So we talked about the conformer a lot, so let's measure you.
Really?
Let's have a
Okay.
seat, Kirby.
Well, that's
And
exciting.
I'm gonna, I say I'm gonna torture you, but it's not, it's not really torture. So this old thing, I'll need your help. So Kirby, pull it. Can you grab it and pull it down? It'll expand. Perfect, perfect, perfect.
Kind of where I would wear it.
Yep, kind of where you would wear it. I like it. So let me pull her off.
Is that it?
That is it for that part of it. So we're also going to get a tape measurement of your head. So if we can, you guys, you can pan in on Kirby's head shape. He may not want you to. But
I've had a lot of foot tracings, but this is the first
I want the
conformer
first-
of the head that I've had.
Isn't it amazing? And it's amazing. It is what it is too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's get a tape measurement too. So this is a double check, a very good double check. And we were right about your head size. I was telling you 22 3/4.
You've got an eye.
And it is about 22 3/4. Yeah, I do.
And so that all informs kind of this measurement, right?
It does. It will reinforce it. So let's write. I will 22 3/4. Kirby. Allison. So I have boxes full of these. So from over the years.
And you cut it out?
So that part gets cut out. Remember, along
Yeah.
the perforated line and loaded into the vermilion.
Yeah, so there we are. Look at that. So what type of block would you choose?
You kind of vary between a regular oval and a long oval. Probably more tapered for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. We'll save this one,
Yeah.
and we'll have
Yeah.
to put my name on that
Totally.
that wait list.
I know. I'm always fishing for customers. So I have one box that somebody's at the end of a sale or a possible sale. They go, I just can't do it right now. And I go, well, I know you're interested. So let me measure you and I'll keep it on file. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like fishing. We're just like,
Yeah, so
"Eh,
that
let
way
me-
you just call it in.
Let me set the fishing line. And
Sleep on it and
Right.
call me back next week.
like anything, it's an investment. How I sell a hat, I will tell people, this is an investment.
Yeah.
Because 25 years later.
Yeah. It's a long sales process, because, the product is an investment. But, if you invest in quality
Yes.
and you take care of it, it'll last forever.
I want it to be that too. I don't want it to be me. I've never jammed somebody in a sale or like quickly.
Yeah.
No, you think about it because you're going to wait 9 months.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things I love, again, about bespoke and about handmade, having gotten to know the maker,
Correct.
having come to visit him in
like it.
Georgetown, having kind of received a tour of the workshop to
Yeah.
see how he's making it, right? I mean, that makes the product, the end product, all that more meaningful. And then a product is being built that has longevity and durability.
Yeah.
So it accumulates more and more meaning over the years until you get to the point where you've got something that you've been wearing for 23 years.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Right.
beautiful. It stains, provoke memories,
Yeah.
where you've worn it, provoke memories. You remember the person that made it for you.
So totally.
And that to me is the pinnacle of bespoke, is not just a better product, but a more meaningful product.
I'm on the same page, and I love that. As in, I rarely talk to somebody about that part of it, but that's totally.
I mean, that to me is the essence. I mean, it's easy to go find a cheap hat that, you'll throw away in a few years.
Yeah.
But the problem is one day, you're left with, just a bunch of meaningless objects that, haven't built any memories or meaning kind of in your life.
I say the same again. A lot of people will have a closet full of 4 hats. Often my sales happen this way. They like the shape of this one. They like the color of this one. They like the look of this one. But at the end of the day, they'll wear none of them because I want all that in one. Well, I like to think I'm that guy of like,
Yeah.
I can fulfill
The one hat.
the one hat.
That's beautiful. It's amazing.
That's my little,
When you can't rush the process,
no.
it takes time.
Again, I'm going to say, I wish you could. I can't. I
Yeah.
won't.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Nathaniel.
Thank you,
Such a
Kirby.
pleasure. One day I'm
Pleasure
going to have a
meeting
hat from you.
Yeah, please.
What an honor to be able to step inside Nathaniel's custom hat shop and to have Nathaniel show us his incredible craft and passion that he puts in to some of the finest hats available anywhere. It really is so encouraging to me to see quality craftsmanship and alive and really thriving, even if it's in places that you might not necessarily expect it, like here in Georgetown, Texas. He's doing some absolutely incredible hats, and I have to say that I think I really look good in one of these, and hopefully we'll be able to add one soon to my wardrobe. If you're watching this channel for the first time, make sure you hit that red subscribe button in the upper right-hand corner so that you can learn whenever we release new videos. And of course, if you haven't visited KirbyAllison.com, please do so. It's how we support this channel. And there you'll find the largest collection of luxury garment care and luxury shoe care accessories in the world, as well as other great clothing accessories like this beautiful sovereign grade necktie and pocket square. I'm Kirby Allison, and I love to help the well-dressed acquire and care for their wardrobes while exploring the world of quality, craftsmanship, and tradition. Thanks for watching.